A little political here this morning, but hopefully in a more upbeat manner, as we have a very special guest joining us, as he does every week in studio with us, Jackie.
That's right. Jeff Link joining us on our Democratic side, finding out what's happening in the world of politics. Of course, everybody's talking about the recent nomination President Trump has done for our Supreme Court, Kavanaugh. We're hearing that name everywhere. We're trying to dig a little bit deeper into who the actual person is if you're not familiar with him, but that seems to be the hot topic this morning.
Big news last night when Trump made the announcement.
Is this any surprise? Was he kind of on the short list of what we thought he might be
it's not really a surprise. And you know, the other thing that Trump did actually as a candidate was he drew up a list of 20 or 25 judges that he would use
go-to list
as his pool of candidates, because he needed to reassure evangelicals and conservatives that he wasn't going to go crazy and pick, for God's sakes, a moderate judge. He was going to pick conservative judges.
Right. And we even had a couple Iowans on that list.
There were a couple Iowans on that list, and he expanded the list a little bit last year to include Kavanaugh.
Okay.
There's a couple interesting things going on. So we knew he was going to pick somebody who was young, right? He's 53 years old.
53 years old, yeah.
We knew he would pick somebody that's conservative, so that's not a surprise.
Right.
A couple of the things that are interesting, one is there's been stories this morning that say that Justice Kennedy had been in touch with the White House for the last year promoting Kavanaugh as because Kavanaugh was his clerk.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And because he knew Kavanaugh and was comfortable with Kavanaugh, he had recommended Kavanaugh to Trump. And he said, look, I'm not going to retire unless you pick Kavanaugh.
So that's the rumor going around now?
That's kind of the rumor, and I think that'll get flushed out here over the course of the next couple of weeks.
If he gets put in.
Which, you know, obviously Washington, D.C. is sort of a small town and everybody kind of knows each other, but there's separation between the branches of government. And so there really shouldn't be a deal between a sitting Supreme Court justice and a president. So if something like that happened, it could be a real trouble for the nomination. Not regarding any of his views or anything like that, but simply because a sitting justice was trying to negotiate his retirement for the successor.
So it kind of looks like an under the table thing.
Could be.
Yeah.
If that
is that breaking any laws or anything, or it's just not a good thing to do?
Well, it gives an awful appearance, first of all. You don't want that kind of horse trading going on for something as important as a Supreme Court seat. Right. The corollary to this, which is interesting, is the one view that Kavanaugh holds, and this doesn't have anything to do with social issues or consumer issues, which we can talk about. But Kavanaugh doesn't believe that a sitting president could ever be indicted.
Right. We just mentioned that in national news.
Right.
And so...
And the Trump administration knew this.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. That's probably one of the stars next to the name.
And so if Kennedy says to Trump, you know, I'll retire if you pick Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh happens to hold this view that you can't indict a sitting president, that could have been the perfect storm that put him over the top of there were two other candidates that were sort of considered front runners. So that storyline could be interesting. And obviously, if this guy gets picked and then one of the first cases that they hear is something that comes up about Trump and whether Trump is ever charged by Mueller or not, you know, that's kind of a big deal.
How much does it mean that our own Chuck Grassley's already come out in support of this nominee with him being a part of the Judiciary Board?
Well, that's like saying Chuck Grassley's breathing air. I mean,
you don't think it holds much weight?
No, I mean, absolutely not. Chuck Grassley's the Senate Republican chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Right.
He made the most partisan political move ever in 2016 by saying we shouldn't confirm a Supreme Court justice in the middle of an election. We should let the people speak.
Right.
Apparently he forgot that he said that 2 years ago. Now that there is a Supreme Court justice opening 17 weeks before an election, he's like, let's get this done. We got to move it through. Well, what's the only difference? Well, we have a Republican president now. We had a Democratic president then. So for Chuck Grassley, this is the guy a Republican or not? That's his only measure. Like nothing else matters.
How
That's
easy
a
or
determining
hard
factor.
is it going to be to push him through? Would they need 52 votes to get past him?
Well,
in?
they're gonna have to get 60 votes for cloture,
Okay.
which means that's how you stop debate.
Okay.
Okay.
And then it only takes 51 votes to
51.
to pass him, but they have to end the debate. And so there's a real question about what are Republicans like Susan Collins going to do. Susan Collins has said she's not going to vote yes to somebody that would overturn Roe versus Wade.
Right.
Everyone seems to think that Kavanaugh would be a vote to overturn Roe versus Wade. It'll be interesting to see.
So this isn't a slam dunk for the Republicans then?
It's close to being a slam dunk, but you know, it depends. If some Republicans decide that this is a bridge too far for them, I mean, think about what's going on. You know, Roe versus Wade has been the law since 1974. They sort of set the framework for all abortion legislation and everything. The state of Iowa this year has passed a bill that is counter to Roe versus Wade. Right, the fetal heartbeat bill that was signed by law by Kim Reynolds violates Roe versus Wade. The reason why they went ahead and passed that bill is because they were hoping that the Supreme Court makeup would change and that they could overturn Roe versus Wade. And then a law like the fetal heartbeat bill could stand. So this is all part of a long-term strategy to really undo a Supreme Court decision that was decided 40 years ago.
So are things lining up the way the Republican Party wanted to line up then?
Well, I think they are, and the question is, will people push back on this enough? Will Republicans say this is a bridge too far? And you know, we have 17 weeks for voters to speak up and say, hey, we're not going down this road anymore. And are they going to show up in big numbers? Are they going to vote for Democratic candidates for governor and for the legislature and for these congressional races? What's going to happen to these Senate races all around the country? Like, this is really going to energize, I believe, people on both sides. And so it'll make for a fascinating mid-year election.
Are we going to see it here locally with our gubernatorial race?
Absolutely, because the fetal heartbeat bill was one of the bigger bills that was passed, and Kim Reynolds signed it into law. And not only did she sign that into law, she said, look, we're not done yet. We've got more to do to restrict abortions. She even said on Iowa Press that she's not in favor of providing exemptions in this law or other bans on abortion for rape or incest, only for life of the mother. So she's really staking out a far extreme view of, you know, abortion rights. And you know, I think that's going to come up in the gubernatorial race. She also has a pick because we have a vacancy on the Iowa Supreme Court, and the Iowa Supreme Court is ultimately going to hear this fetal heartbeat bill. They just acted on another abortion bill, which seems to indicate that they're going to say that the fetal heartbeat bill is unconstitutional. But who knows who she's going to pick? She has the same ability as Trump right now to pick somebody who is ardently pro-life, and that could have a big impact on what happens in the Iowa Supreme Court. The other thing to keep in mind, let's get away from sort of the social issues, sort of Kavanaugh is known as being pro-business, anti-regulation. Well, I'm involved in a lawsuit where I represent a bunch of corn growers, and they're suing a big company called Syngenta. Well, there is a real threat that if our case where Syngenta has been in the wrong, 3 juries found them wrong, asked them to pay farmers literally hundreds of millions of dollars. If this case goes up in front of a judge like Kavanaugh, the farmers are going to take it on the chin, and Syngenta is going to get off without having to pay a penny.
Well, that's going to open up a lot of eyes.
Those are other issues that are hugely important
we need to think about.
In an issue like this, because a lot of my clients, like, you know, Kavanaugh's view on abortion and being pro-life, but they're not going to like his view when it comes to siding with a big corporation over a consumer or a small-time operator. And so there's a lot at stake in these.
All right, this is not as easy as some people might think it is. So again, have to keep an eye and see what happens over the next 17 weeks. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.